Welcome back to the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic, joined by Carlos Ledo of the MIA All Day Podcast. It's Monday, October 16th, right around 3:45 p.m. Carlos, the Hurricanes dropped their second game in a row, 41-31 at North Carolina. They had the lead at halftime, and then basically Carolina made some adjustments, went with a little bit faster pace, shut down Miami's run game, and then the Canes just turned it over a bunch, and the game got away from them. And so now they are 4-2, 0-2 in league play, essentially eliminated for all intents and purposes from probably reaching the ACC championship game unless they upset FSU and they get some help from other people along the way. So we're going to talk about that game, what happened. We're going to look ahead to this week's game against Clemson. Miami trying to avoid an 0-6 start at home in ACC play under Mario Cristobal. So that's a big storyline, right? Hey, gotta learn how to win games at home against good teams. We got a mailbag, and then
just any team. What do you mean good teams? They're 0-6 in the conference. They lost. They got their asses kicked by Duke last year. But I mean, come on, man. Anybody.
I know you're not happy. I know you got a lot to say too. I'm sure you're feeling a little extra chipper this week after that loss. We got the mailbag questions we're going to answer, the midseason report we're going to do. But let's start with Carolina and your biggest takeaway from the game and why Miami's 0-2 in league play right now.
Well, the last 2 weeks they're 0-2 in league play because they're -7 in the turnover department. That's first and foremost. Second, they've been outcoached in the second half of both of those games. I think Georgia Tech and Carolina adjusted at halftime very well and started taking it to the Hurricanes in the second half. And I think the sort of foundation for doing that to the Hurricanes was running the ball right at them, specifically between the guard and center. I went over it on my podcast. One of the things that the Hurricanes need to stop or look out for, two main things: A-gap runs, meaning runs between the center and guard on either side, but specifically on the left side, because that's where Amari and Hampton was getting most of his big plays, which is hard to fathom when you're running inside zone and inside the center and the guard and getting big explosive plays, but that's where he was making his living. And two, defending the deep ball and the deep middle ball. So defending the deep pass over 20 yards down the middle of the field and anything between 10 and 19 in the middle of the field, because that's where Carolina likes to attack. Even going back to last year and the year before, they like to attack the center of the field. That's where they feel comfortable. And unfortunately, that's where the Hurricanes gave stuff up. They didn't adjust their coverages to take away the deep middle of the field. They also had a couple blown coverages in that area. And they did not adjust in terms of their front to try and stop Carolina from running inside. They didn't pinch their tackles. They didn't twist inside. They didn't do enough A-gap blitzing with their linebackers, some run blitzes to try and force them to run outside where they can chase that down and make Amari and Hampton run sideline to sideline. And that was really the big difference. On top of that, the other thing that really pissed me off, which going into the game I said also on my podcast, this is why you guys got to be listening. Okay, self-plug. This is where you guys got to be listening.
Right.
I'm hitting all these things. That Miami needed to go with more 4 wide receiver sets to open up the field, not only for the passing game, because you got to get more athletes on the field. You got guys like Rashard Smith. You got guys like Ray Joseph. You got Tyler Harrell. You got Isaiah Horton, guys that can can make plays if they get the ball in the open field, but also it's going to open up the run game inside for you because you're spreading the field a little bit more. This double tight end bullshit that the Hurricanes are running with one guy that's just basically a mannequin and Cam McCormick, a battering ram that has no ability to catch the football, and Riley Williams, that's a young pup that really doesn't know what he's doing yet, and they're not even looking his way, then what's the purpose of it? For that, go 4 wide, 1 back, spread the field, and use that to your advantage, and they just haven't been able to do that. I'm just really disappointed with both coordinators after this game. I don't think they've adjusted well in ACC play. I think they're doing a lot of the same things over and over again and expecting for it to continue to work and not making any adjustments, which is surprising to me because I felt like they did that better at the beginning of the season.
That was a lot to digest there, brother. But I know you've been
like a noche buena
meal,
bro. I bring you the ham, I bring you the lechon, I bring you the turkey, I bring you the rice, the beans, totones. You gotta digest it. Find a way, do it.
Well, I'm gonna try to lighten the mood a little bit because I met some really cool people in Chapel Hill over the weekend from the Canes United group, and these guys go on the road together. They're from all over the country. Sammy Quinones, who's been one of my loyal readers for a long time, messaged me on Twitter. He says, "Come by the tailgate pregame. Bring Susan Miller-Degnan and Adam Lichtenstein from the Herald and the Sentinel with you. Bring Carlos if he's around." And I got to tell you, there were a lot of people who were disappointed you weren't with me. I think they really wanted to see you there, so you can take some shots and get drunk with them and have some fun. Which, by the way, I did take a shot with some fans pregame. That was off of an ice sculpture of all things. That was entertaining.
Beautiful.
But besides all that, I think they just enjoy your presence on the podcast. And I had a lot of people, tell me you're one of the funniest guys that does podcast, period.
Well, I imagine that they take a lot of shots off the ice sculpture before they listen to the show, and that's why they happen to think I'm kind of funny. The other thing is we just haven't told the people yet. I'm just really an AI generated image. I'm not really real.
Right.
I'm not really here,
Correct.
which is why I don't go to the games. But funny enough, I actually had one of those ice sculptures on my wedding, and I was late to do that like garter thing because I was stuck at the ice sculpture, just huffing down shots of vodka down the slide.
Down the slide, right? Yeah, and so that was a good time. I want to thank Sammy and all the people from Canes United for inviting me over. Cuban Lou, he caters these parties, been doing this for like 15 years. He gave me a huge plate of food. People were just giving stuff away, happy to see Miami sports writers. They weren't happy with the result in the end. I think a lot of people were upset, like you were, that Miami lost that game 41-31 after leading at the half 17-14. But I also think they recognize that, this is a work in progress in year 2 for Mario. He's now 9-9 overall as a coach. And I've had a lot of people point out that Manny Diaz and others had a better record. I think Randy Shannon was 10-8, Mario 9-9, but really only because he didn't take a knee against Georgia Tech. Otherwise, he'd be 10-8, just like Manny Diaz too. So I know I killed you with that one, Carlos.
This has been killing me for 2 weeks. But by the way, if you listen to my podcast, I just uploaded a rant by Raul. He called me, left me a voicemail, so I uploaded that. He went off for like 9 minutes. So if you guys want to hear that, enjoy Raul on my podcast. But listen, they're 4-2. They're probably going to end up somewhere between 8-4 and 7-5. And I hate to hit you with the Herm Edwards, man, but they are who we thought they were at the beginning of the season. This is what happens. I got a little excited, after starting 4-0. I thought they may be, 9-3, 10-2. But I said 8-4 before the season started. And you were saying 7-5. So,
yeah. I went back and I listened to our preseason predictions podcast right before the Miami of Ohio game, and I remember saying 7-5. This team isn't ready to win yet. There's still things that they've got to outgrow. I will say this again: they should be 5-1. So if they're 5-1, they're probably on their way to 9-3 or 10-2. But they gave a game away, which we all thought they would, because that's what Miami does. They lose games they're not supposed to. So they gave Georgia Tech away. This game, though, I will say, Carlos, I think North Carolina was the better team. And I'm going to say it in 2 specific positions, quarterback and wide receiver. I think Drake May and Tez Walker were better than Tyler Van Dyke and Xavier Restrepo. And I think, after the game was over, I was there on the field. I got to watch the end of it. Xavier Restrepo he was spent. 17 targets in this game. I don't know how many catches it was, 11 or something like that. Tyler was just looking for him all game long. And I kept as we walked away and we walked off the field, I was like, is it just me, or for all the changes Mario has done to this roster and improvements? And we're going to get to that in our midseason report, because they have improved statistically everywhere. Okay, compared to last year. But my biggest takeaway was, why are they still counting on the usual suspects, right? Like Xavier Restrepo's been here 4 years. Tyler Van Dyke has been here 4 years. You bring in all this new blood. Where's Tyler Harrell, right? You go on the transfer portal, you bring him in. Where's Shamar Kirk? I know Mark Fletcher's hurt, okay? And there's some news on that today. Mario talked about that today. Is it me, Carlos, or are we not seeing, the coordinators, and you said you were upset with them, are we not seeing enough new blood maybe on the offensive side?
I don't know that it's not enough new blood. What I think we're not utilizing enough weapons on offense, particularly. I think you're coming into this with a game plan. Let's put it this way. Bashard Smith already had a 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Every time he touches the ball, he's explosive. How the hell Do you not get that guy the football more? Do you not see him like a mini cheetah, like a mini Tyreek Hill? Right? He could be that kind of a player. And what do the Miami Dolphins do with their playmakers, right? The Dolphins aren't running complicated stuff, okay? What the Dolphins are doing, especially in the run game, is they're running regular power, counter, lead, sweep. But how do they get to those plays is different with their motion, their formation, and their alignment. And that's how you confuse defenses. How often did the Hurricanes motion in this game? Very few times, from what I
Yeah.
recall. How many times did they use orbit motions like they have in the past, or return motions like the Dolphins do? You haven't seen any of that. You also don't see any shifts out of this team. You're seeing a lot of static formations out of this team, going 2-by-2 or going with that 2 tight end set, and nobody moves. And the defense is just sitting there waiting for what's coming, right? And they're running route concepts at these people that don't take advantage of the zones. They don't do anything to stress the zone. They're running right at the coverages. So I don't know what Shannon Dawson's doing, but this isn't the dynamic offense that I've seen from Houston. Houston motions. Houston shifted. Houston did a lot of things. So to me, it tells me that he really wasn't the offense coordinator last year, like everybody was saying. It was really Dana Holgerson who's calling plays. So that's an issue to me. Like, how do you not create opportunities for your playmakers to get the ball more often? What happened in the fourth quarter when you started going four wide, one back, and really started stressing the defense and looking for Tyler Harrow and looking for Brashard Smith and even Isaiah Horton? These guys are making plays. So you've got all this talent sitting on the bench like they did last year with Colby Young, and you're not utilizing it. And then Colby Young can't get open because they rotate coverage over the top to him to make sure he doesn't beat them down the field. Then the only thing you have available to you is Jacoby George on occasion, which what they ended up doing is being smart. If we're going to press, we're going to press Jacoby George and get right in his face because he weighs 110 pounds. And then, try to hit Restrepo at some point. But the other thing is you're not creating route concepts that could take advantage of other things. And how many RPOs have we seen this season? I don't remember seeing an RPO this season. Right. And if there have, it's been 1 to 3 at most. These are basic plays that every team has in their packages, especially teams that like to spread it out and throw the ball. If you're talking about an air raid teams have now adopted RPOs as part of their system. There should be an RPO. You got to put the defensive conflict. How many bubble screens have we seen this season?
I don't
not
remember many at all. Yeah.
I don't remember many. All we're doing is a quick screen. That's it. So you're not stressing the defense laterally. The only quick toss, quick throw you're doing to a quick wide receiver is that quick wide receiver screen. That's the only thing you're doing. You're not doing a now screen, which is him just turning and catching the ball and getting upfield. You're not doing a bubble screen. You're not stressing the defense both horizontally and vertically, and that's a problem. You're not looking to create opportunities for other playmakers by drawing up plays for them, creating opportunities to get them the football in creative ways. You're not doing any of that. You're static on offense, and that to me is disturbing. It's not that there's a lack of playmakers or a lack of new blood being used. It's even when they are in the game, they're not getting the football. Do it.
Brashard Smith, who we started this rant on, has 11 targets this season. He is 4th on the team. Next on the list up is Colby Young with 31, Jacoby George with 40, and Xavier Restrepo now with 61 targets on the year. I talked to Tyler about, I guess sort of his progressions. He just says, look, there's a lot of times where Xavier is either his first or second read, and what he's taught to do in this offense ultimately, right, is get the ball to the receiver in space. But I think to your general point, Carlos, of everything you just talked about, there probably needs to be a little bit more creativity from the offensive coordinator. Now, that said, they don't fumble at the goal line in the first quarter or the second quarter, whenever the hell it was in the first half. They probably scored 38 points. 38 points should be good enough to win. They're a top 20 scoring team in the country. They're doing their job. It just feels like they're making mistakes at the most inopportune times. And the turnovers, as you mentioned, 9 turnovers in 2 games. You can't win many games like that. And
they would have 38 points, but remember, they got a couple garbage touchdowns in that fourth quarter where Carolina had to stop playing on defense. So that's not that 10-point margin to me is a little inflated. It's a little deceiving because they were down 21 going into the fourth.
Okay, fair enough. I think, on the defensive end, and Lance Guidry talked about this today. Obviously, he had the screw up, right, where he got flagged on 4th and 1. That led to a touchdown. He came out. He was trying to call timeout. Basically, he said he didn't see the referee on the field because normally the referee is behind the center, right, when teams are trying to substitute and trying to make the change, on defense to delay the snap. and I guess the referee was on the defensive side of the ball. He didn't see him. He walked out and was trying to call timeout. And ultimately, he thinks he got the flag because he took his headset off. He was pissed. He was trying to get the right personnel on the field. Frustrating moment. Another moment where you say, man, the coaches blew it for this team. It cost them 7 points. But the bigger thing Guidry talked about was how much North Carolina's pace ultimately affected Miami's defense, and how the conditioning led to, the fact that they had guys getting tired led to some of those big runs Carolina had in the second half, led to Miami only having 1 sack in the second half. Again, big picture wise, Carolina's coordinators made adjustments that beat Miami. And as you said, in the Georgia Tech game, same thing sort of happened, right? I mean, third quarter, go back, Miami was up 3-0 at the half. They had a 10-0 lead. Georgia Tech's coordinators did what they were supposed to do and kept themselves in the game. So for everybody who's saying, the coaching has been great, I think we can also look at these last 2 examples and say, yeah, it's not good enough. And if it was better, Miami be at least 5-1 right now, maybe 6-0.
Yeah, and I mean that Guidry thing, man. It's 4th down. You're running out onto the field. He's like 15 yards onto the field. He's getting to the hash mark, and it's like, dude, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? This isn't high school football. You're not gonna get away with this kind of crap. Like, why do that? Just the head coach is over there. He can call a timeout too. Like, somebody's near an official somewhere where you don't have to sprint on the field.
Right.
Like you're the guy from Family Guy that's rubbed in baby oil, just sprinting across the town half naked. Like, that's not gonna help. I know you're from Louisiana, but don't do the thing that don't act like the guy in the stands from The Water Boy, like twisting his nipple rings, running onto the field. Don't do that. Okay? That's not gonna help us.
The mental images.
The other thing is, I mean, it may seem inconsequential because they scored on that play. But Mario declining the holding penalty when it was 3rd and 20 after the incompletion, instead of making it 2nd and 30, to me, I thought was a mistake from the get-go, because here's what happens. Carolina is still within field goal range. If they gain another 5 to 10 yards, they solidify themselves being in field goal range, even if it's 3rd and 20. You're allowing them to try and kick and get an extra 3 points within their range. So what does Guidry do? He decides, we're going to stop them from trying to gain any yardage. We're going to press this and be aggressive. We're going to bring pressure and play man to try and stop a completion. Well, what happens? They get beat by Tez Walker again on another post. The problem with that is, if you back them up to 2nd and 30, now you've got that cushion where you don't have to be as aggressive defensively with your coverage. You could play a little bit looser. You could come up to the ball. You could stop them and still keep them out of field goal range on 2 downs. And I mean, I don't know why he declined that. I guess the theory was, better be 3rd and 20, 1 play to get off the field, than 2 more to allow them to gain 30 yards. But geez, man, it's
listen,
like
I was just gonna say, I thought the game plan Guidry came up with of we talked about this pregame, but basically rattling Drake May in ways that he hadn't really been rattled. They hit him. I mean, they sacked him 4 times. They hit him hard. At one point, he decided to slide. And Guidry today in his press conference said, they felt like they had him rattled. The difference was, as soon as Carolina started playing with pace and lining up quickly and getting the line of scrimmage and snapping the ball quickly, it totally discombobulated Miami, which makes me think, well, why weren't they prepared for that, right? And Guidry today said they do practice for up-tempo offenses, but they only do about 4 plays in a row like that in practice versus an entire series where they're out there 11, 12 plays and everything is going fast. So bottom line is, they didn't get the job done. The defense had its worst day of the season against arguably the best quarterback they'll face all year. And so they're 4-2 now. And I think,
and I'll be honest, the pace to me wasn't the difference. The difference was Carolina running it right at Miami and dominating their front 7. Okay. And pushing them off the ball. The pace had a little bit to do with it, but I mean, they're supposed to be really in really good shape because of this 4th quarter program. What happened to that? I mean, and this bullshit of, we only practice 4 plays of pace. Everybody plays with a little bit of pace. Yeah, Carolina picked it up a little bit, but it wasn't significantly faster that made you say, oh my God, these guys are really going super fast. No, What they were doing was just hammering the ball, like Georgia Tech did in the second half to start against Miami, just hammering the ball inside the Garden Center and making those defensive tackles that we said were undersized to begin with at the beginning of the year, that everybody laughed at us, especially after the first 4 games. Oh, they're number 1 in rushing defense. Okay, welcome to the ACC. Now you're playing offensive linemen that can bull people over. And
Yeah.
look at what happens.
Well, and I got news for you. Will Shipley and Phil Moff are pretty good. They're
They're
two of
probably better.
the. Yeah, Phil Moff is a big beast back there, 220 pounds. Shipley is one of the best running backs in the country. And that's the challenge this week. And Cade Klubnik, Lance Guidry said today is one of the fastest quarterbacks, maybe the fastest quarterback they'll face in terms of speed. So it is going to be a challenge this week against Clemson. They've got a top, 20 defense in a lot of categories, especially in their front seven. So you think about Miami and the fact that they had -2 rushing yards in the second half against Carolina on 10 carries. They basically abandoned it because they fell behind by so much. But, they didn't have 100 yards rushing against Carolina. Guys have been fumbling the football, right? Henry Parrish Jr. just fumbled. Don Chaney Jr. Had the one before. Obviously, they killed him against Georgia Tech. A.J. Allen, you put him in there. He's obviously a talented player, but I made the joke during the middle of the broadcast that Don Solinger took his shoe off and threw it at the TV when he saw A.J. Allen try to pass block and get run over there. So
Yeah.
again, I think a lot of these concerns, things that you and I talked about in the preseason, right? Like the Texas A&M game, the win, the 4-0 start, as you said, I think it made us all sort of forget, well, this team's better than we thought they were going to be. And the reality is some of the deficiencies that have arisen, it happens when you play better competition. These are league, the ACC, for all the jokes that people make about the league and it's not good and this and that, they had a pretty good record this year in Power 5 games. They won some games against the SEC this year, including Miami. So I think, Georgia Tech, I didn't think they would necessarily be a team that wins more than 6 games, but they stayed on the field with Miami for the entire first half and came back to beat them at the end because of a boneheaded coaching decision. It's not like they're terrible. And this game, Carolina, I mean, this is their first undefeated start since 1997. They beat South Carolina. They struggled against App State, but they've beaten everybody they've had in front of them so far, and they dominated Syracuse, who was I think a better team, at least probably a bowl team this year. So again, the competition has gone up. It's going to go up this week, and I'm worried for Miami.
Even the games that people are like checking boxes, they're going to be a win.
Yeah.
Pitt just beat Louisville.
Yeah,
bad. And it's like you
don't
get a
Pitt
break.
Not on the schedule this year, thankfully for Miami.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying what I'm saying is these aren't games that you could just any game in the league play is going to be difficult. It's not going to be a walk, except for probably Virginia, but who knows?
Well, they got to win. They took care of business against William and Mary a couple weeks ago, so at least they're not winless anymore. Couple notes from today: Tyler Van Dyke dealing with a bit of a right knee injury. He had his knee wrapped with ice. Susan Miller-Degnan, my colleague at the Herald, reported Mario Cristobal didn't like her question because anytime you ask about your quarterback and having his right knee banged up, he doesn't want to hear that. I can tell you from seeing Tyler up close on Saturday. Again, much like Xavier Restrepo, physically beat up, right? Tough game, lost. He got hit in the chest when he delivered that 35-yard touchdown pass to Jacoby George. Got hit really, really hard. I think he kind of hurt the knee a little bit when he ran out of bounds and got hit there. But Cristobal says he's going to play. And this is the time of year where you're in the middle of the season, quite literally. Everybody's dealing with bumps and bruises. I think Tyler's playing. He did say that he tore 3 ligaments in his right index finger before the season started. So that was why he had his right index finger taped up in the first couple games. He says it doesn't hurt him as much anymore. He's kind of gotten used to it as the season's gone on. But again, your quarterback, who I think is still a top 10 quarterback in passing efficiency. I got to look at the numbers again. Yes, he's thrown a lot of interceptions, but he's also putting his guts out there every single week. And I know there's some people, Carlos, at least on my timeline, who've been saying, bench his ass, put Emory Williams in. I'm tired of the Tyler Van Dyke era. I ask you, what do you say to all of that?
He still delivers a ball with accuracy and velocity. If you saw that out and up that he threw to Xavier Restrepo, that thing was a dime. He underthrew, I think it was Colby Young on a post. I forgot what it was, but every other pass that he's throwing, he's delivering accurately and on time, unless he obviously throws it into a defender's hands. But to me, I don't think he's he's not deserving of benching at this point. He's turned the ball over because he just doesn't process zones well, and his offensive coordinator, I don't think, is putting him in the best position to succeed. I think in certain instances, Tyler, when he feels uncomfortable, he goes straight to Xavier Restrepo, zeroes in on where he's at on the field, and tries to get him the ball come hell or high water. Then that's what happens. What an offensive coordinator needs to do is have the quarterback feel comfortable enough to go to other receivers and progressions and find other opportunities to deliver the ball to playmakers through other concepts that makes it easy on him. Like I was saying, RPOs, bubble screens, quick screens, hitches, slants, things that that are quick throws that are easy to deliver and that work against most coverages. But these longer route concepts that they're running and sometimes running right into coverage are not helping Tyler Van Dyke. Is he making mistakes because he stares receivers down, particularly Xavier Restrepo? Absolutely. He's done that since he was a freshman. He has not worked on that. His eye discipline is not great. But then you need to counter that. You need to create two-man route concepts or quicker read schemes to allow him to get rid of the football quicker and get the ball in playmakers' hands. Now, the other thing you can't do is get in third and long situations where now you have to come out with more long developing route concepts that he has to read across the field because that hurts you. So you need to stay ahead of the chain to be able to do that. So I think it's not an issue of just Tyler Van Dyke. Yes, Tyler Van Dyke has made mistakes. He's thrown interceptions, but he's thrown a lot of touchdowns too and thrown for a lot of yards. The thing is, the offensive coordinator and the running game have to help him as well.
They do. Dawson said this was his second best performance of the season behind Texas A&M. I know he threw for like almost 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dawson said that he had 3 bad plays against North Carolina, but hung in there. And he said the throw to George is as elite as he's ever seen. And I got to agree. I mean, that was an unbelievable stay in the pocket. That was an NFL throw. So, couple more notes on injuries. Cristobal said Mark Fletcher doubtful for this week. Probably more likely to come back against Virginia a week from now. Tight ends, haven't been involved much. Elijah Arroyo did get in the game for 6 snaps in this game. And I saw him put a beautiful seal block on the third series to help spring a 7 or 8 yard run by Henry Parrish. Obviously didn't have any balls thrown his way, but they're expecting him to be much more involved. And they need him, Carlos, because we talked about this in the last podcast, the fact that there are very few balls going to tight ends and running backs. It feels like it makes the defense have the upper hand here. Not a lot of element of surprise. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I missed from today. Lance Guidry said this, a win cures everything. Let's transition to Clemson and maybe some other topics here, the midseason report. Does a win cure everything? A win against Clemson this week cure everything in your mind?
I think it helps. It helps a lot because you're now 5-2 and in a position where you probably would hope that's where you would have been at this point in the schedule. You replace the loss to Georgia Tech to a loss with Clemson, right? So you expected to lose to Clemson and North Carolina essentially coming to the season. So you make that Georgia Tech loss a wash essentially.
Yeah.
So maybe that helps some. I think it helps from a confidence standpoint if you beat Clemson, because although they're having a down year and they've got 2 losses already, I think this is the best defense Miami has faced to this point in the season. I think they're ranked 8th against the run in the country, Clemson, in terms of yards per game. They're ranked 14th against the pass. It's going to be a challenge to get receivers open against Clemson because their top 4 corners are big and athletic. They're all between 6 feet and 6'2", between 180 and 195. These are big, long, athletic dudes. They got big safeties. They got big athletic linebackers that come up and stick you. They got a really good defensive line. This is probably, like I said, the best defense they've faced to this point. So if they can move the football and get a win here, then it's a big change in the season, a sea change, because you've got some momentum now going forward. Hopefully get a second win in a row against Virginia, and then you line up against Florida State with a chance to maybe still control your own destiny within the ACC if you get some help. But offensively for Clemson also, you're going to have Will Shipley and like you said, what the other running back, the other big
Bill
dude,
Maffa, yeah.
Maffa coming downhill at you, and that's a tough combo along with Klubnik in the run game. So whoever wins the battle in the trenches this week, whoever runs the football better, I think is going to win the game.
Clemson is a 3-point favorite according to the betting line from what I just saw here. They obviously have killed Miami the last several years, including 40-10 last year in Death Valley. Although that game was a little bit more lopsided because a couple of late touchdowns, but they've won 4 straight in the series, all by 25 points or more, 178-30 over the 4-game span, including the 2017 ACC championship game. This is a big game for Mario because, and I wrote this in my column afterward, and mentioned it earlier today. To start 0-6 at home in league play would be something that would get used against Miami quite a bit by the opposition, and it's already being used. I've seen some of the FSU and UF Twitter people sort of highlighting the fact that they have a great player like Ruben Bain, who's a freshman, and people are sort of phrasing it like, they saw him crying after the game, some of the video clips, the tears, and they're saying, man, look at this guy. He's wasting his career at Miami. He should be somewhere else. Again, we live in a different era, right? NIL, transfers, all kinds of things. And people, are going to do what they got to do to hurt you. This competition to get elite players. Miami beats Clemson. I think they shut a lot of that up for all the reasons we discussed already. They lose, and I think that only gets louder. How much pressure do you sense is on Mario Cristobal going into this game?
I don't know that it's any more than it was going into North Carolina. I think following that loss to Georgia Tech, the way they lost, he felt like he needed to get a win to get this program, back on track and right the ship and get the narrative changed. I think it's equal to what he was facing against North Carolina. I think from now on, every game is going to be pressure packed, and it's going to get ratcheted up another notch when he goes to play Florida State, just because it's a rivalry game and that's your direct competitor when it comes to recruitment here in the state of Florida, along with the University of Florida. But Florida State is obviously dominating that right now. So to me, it's equal from last week. I don't think it's any more intense pressure. I think he's got to win just to prove himself. Week to week, he's got to show that he can win in this league, that he can improve this team. Now, let's say they end up 8-4. Objectively, that's a really good turnaround. That's a 3-win improvement from a season ago. You flipped the roster, you made some changes, you got yourself a 3-win improvement, and now you're trending upwards. And hopefully you land a top 10 recruiting class to go along with that. And now your momentum's going forward. I think anything less than 8-4, you've got yourself a problem. But I mean, they're staring down the barrel of another 4-4 league season, which has been the average around here for a long time. 5-3, 4-4 for the last 20 years. So it's not so much the pressure of beating Clemson. To me, it's the pressure of doing more in conference than you have, and then most coaches have done down here for a very long time.
All right, Carlos. I'm probably gonna need to do another episode this week and maybe get those Canes United fans on there to make this a little cheerier, because I can hear the people already on YouTube screaming at us, man, you guys are so negative, blah, 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 blah. Look, we sort of respond to what happens here with this program as it goes week to week to week. We try to paint the picture of what's going on. I share as much information as I know that I can share in regards to where this team is, injuries, etc. So I hope I've updated you at least from that perspective going into this Clemson game. Maybe break down the Clemson game a little more if we do another podcast later this week. But I want to get to our midseason report and then our mailbag, Carlos, because we've been at this for a while now. The Athletic is having me write this for Wednesday, a midseason report. It includes surprises, key stats, predictions, all that kind of stuff. So I figured you and I can do the same thing here. I got some categories for you.
All right. Let's try and make it cheery too. So I'll use a more cheery tone of voice, see if that helps.
What's been the biggest surprise, whether it be a player, position group? What would you say has been the biggest surprise for this team this year?
So I'm going to keep it, positive. I'm going to make you guys happy. I'm not going to pee on your parade. Not point out that this team's 0-2 again in league play to start off. Not going to point out all the bad things that have happened. What I'm going to say is I'm extremely surprised, not extremely surprised, but pleasantly surprised at how good Ruben Bain is.
Yes.
Right as a freshman. He is dominant. That kid has a chance to be one of the best defensive linemen here that have come through the University of Miami, just the way he's played as a freshman. He's outshined Leonard Taylor. He's outshined other guys on that line, on the defensive line that were supposed to be better than him, and older guys and veterans. He's just a spectacular player with a great motor, great heart. Kid plays hard every down, and I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's certainly been the most pleasant surprise, and I think part of the reason you've seen so much of him, obviously, is Akeem Mesidor's injury. Mesidor was at the game in street clothes. I don't know that he's any closer to coming back. Carlos, I don't know how serious the injury really is, but I think he's a kid that probably wanted to go pro after this year, and I'm not sure that he can because he needs to put more on film. So maybe he comes back and plays a few games, but ultimately Bain has been the story. And I sat here, by the way, and I broke down a bunch of numbers and snap counts and all that. First of all, nobody has played more snaps in Miami's front line, their defensive line, than Ruben Bain to this point. 235 snaps for the true freshman, 4 starts. He is 14th among all Power 5 edge rushers in terms of his overall grade. He's an 81.8 PFF grade, which is sensational. And he's just a true freshman. I can tell you I'm picking the freshman All-American team for the Athletic with Max Olson, my colleague. Pretty good shot. He and Francis Mauigoa are going to make that team. So very deserving, performing at a super high level, and to me deserves a lot of credit. I'm going to do it from the opposite side here, and I'm going to go since you
There you go, Manny.
since
There
you
go.
went positive.
The king of ping on parades. You just stand on top of buildings. You love drinking a gallon of Gatorade, standing on top of buildings in New York, and just peeing down on the Macy's Day Parade. That's what you like to do.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely correct. It's what I do. And this is more of a team category thing, and we've talked about this already. The fact that tight end you has been tight end disappeared you this season.
Tight end who?
Tight end who? Exactly. You said it better than I did. Obviously Elijah Arroyo, 6 snaps is a big reason why. But I for sure thought somebody would be catching the ball for this team at the tight end position just because of the history, the fact that it's had so much success. I was not expecting for Miami's tight ends to get to the midway point of the season and have one catch.
Okay, I
Let
was
me
going to say
count
total of 12 catches.
3 catches, 5 catches, a total of 5 catches for 40. Hold on, I'm doing the math. And 28 is 68 and 975 yards and 1 touchdown. 5 catches, 75 yards, 1 touchdown from the tight end position. And again, this offense has done phenomenal. I'm going to make it cheery again for everybody, okay? I'm going to read some stats here for Miami. They've improved from 97th in scoring to 13th in scoring, okay? 37.7 points a game. Their average yards per play has gone from 89th, 5.34 a year ago, to 7th in the country, 7.33. They have 40 explosive plays of 20 yards or more. Last year, they had 42 for the whole season, and they already had 40 halfway through. Your quarterback rating, 11th in the country. Last year was 85th. Completion percentage, 12th best in the country. It was 61st. Passing attempt yards, 15th in the country. They were 83rd a year ago. Touchdowns, 15th this season. They were 80th last year. 16 touchdown passes. They had 18 for the whole year last year. We're at the halfway point. They're 15th in rushing yards per game, 5.41. They were 95th a year ago, 3.74. That's just on offense. But the stunning thing is the tight ends aren't involved more. And I guess for me, I was expecting more from that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the shocking thing is that somehow Jaleel Skinner can't get on the field. We saw him last year. He was such a great weapon that they used towards the end of the season. Athletic guy, can get down the field, but I guess he's just not doing what he needs to do in practice to get on the field, and be able to be a contributor to this team, because that would be a huge help. Aside from that, I will say another positive thing, another surprise to me is the play of Jacoby George. He's really stepped up and become more consistent. His thing was he's always shown flashes of ability and great ability to make big plays, but his consistency wasn't there. His focus lacked. And this year we've seen him step up a lot and make a lot of big plays, and sort of help distribute the ball when Tyler isn't staring down Xavier Restrepo. But to me, in terms of the offense, yes, they've done some great things, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And if you can make those improvements, if you could find a way to also get the running backs involved in the passing game too, not just the tight end, to make some of the adjustments that I said with the motions, with the RPOs and things like that, there's still a lot of room to grow, which means this team, they haven't hit their ceiling. They're not even close to it. They have the ability to still push further, offensively and defensively, which means if they could get this win against Clemson and start to figure things out, maybe the season ends a little bit differently than we're anticipating. But again, to this point, lots of improvement, but there's still a lot of room to grow.
A couple more stats because I wanted to share some of these. Third down conversions, they're 28th in the country. They're at 46% clip. They were 55th a year ago, 40%. Red zone touchdown percentage, that's the one area that you look at statistically, it's not that big of an improvement. They're 78th, 58%. Last year, they were 54%, 101st. But offensive line, only 6 sacks given up by the actual offensive line this year. Okay, they gave up 20 a year ago. Pressures, they're ranked 31st out of all the FBS teams. Last year they were 86th. Tackles for loss, they're ranked 20th. They're only giving up 4 tackles per loss per game. A year ago it was closer to 6. Sacks as a team, they ranked 24th, 1.33 allowed per game. A year ago they were 109th, giving up over 3 sacks a game. To me, it's turnovers, red zone execution, little things like that is obviously what hurt them against Georgia Tech, what hurt them here against North Carolina. They don't fumble there. Their red zone touchdown percentage is better than what it is. So defensive side of the ball, scoring defense, they're 25th. Last year they were 67th. Yards per play, they're 36th this year. A year ago they were 103rd. Opponent quarterback rating. Last year, they were 102nd, Carlos. This year, they're 32nd. I mean, there's so many areas they've gotten better. Completion percentage by the opposing quarterback, down 6%. They're 21st in the country. They were 80th a year ago. Passing touchdowns allowed, they're 34th. 8 allowed. Last year, they gave up 20, so they're under the rate that they gave up a year ago. They were 121st last year in passing yards allowed per attempt, 8.3. They're down to 41st, 6.8, top 50. Rushing yards per play, 19th. A year ago, they were 63rd. So a lot of areas, again, that you can sit here and say so much better than a year ago. But I guess when you lose by not taking a knee and you turn the ball over 9 times in 2 weeks, it leaves you a little frustrated because you think they should have been better. Should have won those games.
To me, the biggest disappointment is they came in with a really good game plan to rattle Drake May, to get him on the ground, which I thought was necessary, and not just creating pressures. If you pressure Drake May and you don't hit him, you don't take him to the ground, you don't sack him, it's not going to make a big difference. Because if he's elusive enough that he can deal with pressure, and he's talented enough to make throws under duress. But when you're pounding him and you're hitting him, and you're getting him on the ground, you're throwing off his rhythm. He looked uncomfortable most of the game, except for the times he was hitting big plays. And it's a shame that got lost because of the turnovers and the way that the game ended up changing for the Hurricanes, because it was a good defensive plan and I think a good offensive plan to start, but then they didn't adjust, and that's where it went downhill. So I think that's the theme. I think they've gotten to a point where yes, they're improved, but there needs to be some tweaks to be able to get it to the next level. And how do you get there? Are your coordinators good enough and savvy enough and self-aware enough to make the changes that are necessary to get there? Are you going to start seeing some more bodies rotate in and seeing some more changes offensively and defensively to help them get to that next level? And then maybe pull the upset against Clemson and see what happens against Florida State, because it's a rivalry game. You never know.
All right. Offensive MVP to this point, who are you giving it to and why?
Wow. Offensive MVP, Xavier Restrepo. He's made all the plays.
Yeah, I think he's had every opportunity. I think he has been the most reliable guy week to week to week, in terms of not disappointing you.
Yeah, and listen, it's not we know Tyler is over targeting, yes, but Xavier's still making the plays. Everything they throw at him, he's catching. He makes plays after the catch. He's tough as nails, and the guy's out there pretty much for every snap.
The other guy I would give it to is Matt Lee, who's the #1 center in the country according to PFF. And again, I know Pro Football Focus's grades are different. I know he had the bad snap that led to the fumble on Saturday, but Matt Lee, when you look at offensive linemen and some of the grades, and I updated all this, first among centers, Jalen Rivers 22nd, and this is among Power 5 guys, by the way. Jalen Rivers 22nd among offensive tackles. And then your other guys, Cohen, 89th among guards, Inez Cooper, 104th, and then Francis Mauigoa, 88th. This is usually each of these position groups go about 250 deep. So they're all in the upper half, all in the top 100, except for Cooper at their respective positions. So offensive line has been very, very good. And until Saturday, I would say they were probably, as a unit, the best offensive unit to this point, even with the receivers doing everything, because they were giving Tyler time, I think, and producing really well.
Yeah, I agree. And like we said before the season even started, I thought the addition of Matt Lee would be the biggest thing on that offensive line because people don't realize how a good center changes an offensive line, and how good it could be. I mean, he's night and day above what Ja'Kai Clark was, and Corey Gaynor, who went over to North Carolina and started committing penalties over there and missing blocks. Good job, Corey.
Restrepo, by the way, the second best receiver among Power Five in terms of overall grade from Pro Football Focus. So Jacoby George, 13th, Colby Young, 127th. Again, usually each of these position groups go about 200 something deep. Again, so they're grading out well. Tyler Van Dyke, fifth best quarterback, according to PFF. Among the running backs, Don Chaney Jr., 31st, Henry Parrish, 38th, AJ Allen, 79th. On the defensive side, who do you give the MVP to? The first half MVP.
First half MVP. Wow, that's a tough one. I'm gonna have to go Ruben Bain.
Okay, I can respect that. I'm actually gonna go with Jaden Davis, and I know he
That was my
gave
other
up.
guy.
Yeah, he gave up the touchdown, obviously, to Tez Walker. Not an easy assignment, but I thought he was key in the Texas A&M win, and that's been their biggest win to this point. Cornerback was my biggest concern coming into this season, and I feel better
Yeah.
about that group as a whole.
Yeah, and it's sad to see that, after the injury, like you mentioned in your article, Cam hasn't been the same guy, and James Williams has been undisciplined in terms of his coverage on occasion. So the secondary is starting to regress a little bit as what the strong point of that secondary. The safeties were supposed to hold it down. Now they're starting to collapse a little bit and making it a little bit tougher for the corners to hold up their end of the bargain too.
Yeah, and as Lance Guidry said today in his press conference, at times, maybe guys are sort of shedding some of their responsibilities because they're trying to make a play, right? They're trying
Yep.
to make up for whatever issue, and that happens when teams play with pace. You're a little confused. Hey, I'm just going to do this. Cam Kitchens ranks 102nd among safeties. James Williams 74th. Williams has the better overall grade, 71.6 from Pro Football Focus. Davis ranked 41st among cornerbacks. Next is Daryl Porter. He's 52nd. to Corey Couch, 64th. And then Devontae Brown, who's played 111 snaps, hasn't started a game, but has the fourth most action among corners. He ranks 138. So those are your corners. And then at linebacker, Francisco Mauigoa has been pretty solid. He ranks 72nd among linebackers. KJ Cloyd, 165th. Corey Flagg, 37th, but he hasn't started. He's no longer started. He's playing about, I don't know, 20 something snaps a game.
Mm-hmm.
Wesley Bassane, 159th. And then in terms of your other defensive linemen, the highest ranked guy, Leonard Taylor, defensive tackle, 14th. I know he didn't have any pressures. I know a lot of fans were
He
complaining
had
about him.
0 tackles, 0 pressures, 0 everything in that last game.
Yeah, that was not a good performance. Thomas Gore, who comes off the bench, is actually rated the sixth best defensive tackle, but he's only played 93 snaps. So it's kind of limited opportunities, and he just doesn't have the size. You can't put him out there. It's kind of
No.
like sprinkle him in. Jafari Harvey ranks 146th among edge rushers. Bain, I already mentioned, 14th. Jared Harrison Hunt, 157th. He's made 4 starts, 201 snaps, 65.3 grade, which makes him very sort of pedestrian, not necessarily special. Branson Dean obviously has been dinged up. He started 2 games, 122nd among the D tackles. And that's it. Carlos, any other categories? Let me see here. Let me go back to my trusty sheet. Biggest strength on the team.
Biggest strength on the team. Wow. Early in the season, I would have said offensive line. I think I'm gonna go with offensive line. I think they're probably the most consistent group out of all the groups.
I agree with you. I think we will see this week against Clemson whether or not we regret it, but I think
Yeah,
they've been
of
the
course.
most consistent group.
Par for the course. As soon as we say offensive line, guess what's gonna happen? They're
Yeah,
gonna rush for negative 75 yards, 19 sacks, and then we're gonna look like crap. But that's fine.
Biggest weakness.
Biggest weakness. I don't even know if this isn't really, you can't attribute it to a position group, but I think just turnovers, inability to create them, and inability to hang on to the football on the offensive end. That to me has been the biggest weakness for this team thus far. I mean, if you want a position group, I'd probably tight ends.
Yeah, they're -3 right now in the turnover margin. They've only produced 9 turnovers. They've coughed it up 12 times to back up your point.
Yeah, being -7 the last 2 weeks doesn't help.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one. Most important remaining game. I'm gonna go with Clemson this week because while they could ultimately recover the following week against Virginia and still go 8-4, I think from a national narrative perspective and a recruiting perspective, you beat Clemson this week, you kind of send a message, hey, we do have things sort of going in the right way. Obviously, the rivalry with Florida State will always be the most important game, but I think Florida State's better than them, and that's not the Seminole fan in me, as some of you have accused me of being. Saying that, I think that's a much tougher ask to go on the road and win in Tallahassee, especially after you got your ass kicked last year, 45-3. I think this is the more winnable game, and I think if you win it, it sets a different tone. People can't say, "Hey, you're 0-6 at home in ACC play."
Listen, I think people don't understand how big a Florida State fan you are. Your Halloween costume is actually Chief Osceola, and you've gotten like one of those old school little brooms and put like a horse thing on it so you could gallop around your neighborhood, trick or treating.
You
As
got
Chief
me.
Osceola. You're gonna get like a little one of those tiki torches. And you're gonna be spiking it in people's lawns as you grab candy. All over
Exactly.
the place. Um, Listen, I agree with you. I think this is the most winnable game because one, it's at home. Two, Clemson's a little bit down this year, and it's going to be the one they're most healthy for. I think the earlier the game is in the season, the better for the Hurricanes because you don't know who you might lose as time goes on in terms of injuries. And again, like to your point, if they win this game, it's not only a boost for recruiting, boost in the eyes of the nation. Although everybody will still talk crap and say, "Oh, you beat a down Clemson team. It took this crappy Clemson team for you to get a win against them." Um, it'll help the locker room. I think it'll help them gain confidence. I think
100%.
starting 0-3, having 3 losses in a row, and feeling like you can't beat a good ACC opponent, that'll wear on this team mentally. And you'll probably see a crappy performance against Virginia. They'll beat them, but they'll probably play like crap. It won't be the 2-1 15-inning barn burner that we saw last year and Jake Garcia winning on a pass ball. It'll be, a little bit more comfortable, but it won't be the performance that you would want from this team against Virginia leading into Florida State. I think that they beat Clemson. They've got momentum. They've got confidence. They shake loose a couple of disappointments with Virginia, with the Georgia Tech and North Carolina game, and just set themselves up for having their destiny within their hands to see what they could do the rest of the year.
All right, and prediction for the
Is
final.
that positive enough, people? Is that positive enough for you?
I think you hit the positive juice. Whatever that positivity mustard, you sprinkled it on there. All right, prediction for the rest of the season, Carlos. I'm gonna go first. You can go right after. I'm gonna say they finish 8-4. They beat Clemson this week. I think they lose to Florida State, and then I'm still expecting some crazy thing to happen to them this year again down the road. Who knows if it's because of injuries, if it's an NC State team that's just desperate, decides to show up on a Thursday night, or not a Thursday night, but a Saturday night and play out of its mind. It always seems to happen to this team, and so I do think that they're going to beat Clemson this week, though. I do.
Listen, I think 8-4 is the conservative approach. I think that's a realistic expectation. If they beat Clemson, in my mind, I think they finish 9-3.
Maybe they do.
There you go. Listen, I took the positivity mustard and I put it on the positive kielbasa, the big positive kielbasa, and I stuffed it down my throat. All right, never mind. That didn't go the way I wanted it. That was not well planned.
No.
Forgive me for that imagery. We're gonna strike that. We're gonna edit that from the podcast.
Oh boy. All right. I'm gonna go to our mailbag, and I appreciate a lot of people sending questions in. I know there's a lot of feelings.
Voicing your concerns to us like we're HR.
Yes. This is from Myrick McCrae, MJ_McCrae. He wants to know, Carlos, is Raul from Hialeah concerned at all about the tight end position being missing in action this season? Tight end as position group has less than 5 catches. We've obviously talked about this already. How worried is Raul about tight ends?
Raul's never worried about tight ends because Raul's got his eye on tight ends at all times, baby. I can tell you that right now. Raul ain't worried about that. Now, if you want to hear what Raul's worried about, go to my podcast that I just uploaded today and hear his rant. He'll tell you exactly what he's feeling.
All right. This is from J.K. Slay. Back to my Leonard Taylor question. Can we stop lying? He's a decent role player, but no game changer. He is what he is. We have seen the ceiling. Do you agree with that?
JK, first of all, I love you, man. Thank you for the participation week in and week out. You bumped this question earlier in the week after the game. You've resurfaced it again one more time, as if we were resurfacing the Titanic after scavenging for it. Buddy, who hurt you? What is your axe to grind with Leonard Taylor? I get it. It's not playing well. But my man, what's with the crusade? Why? Why are you hunting this guy down at all points on all social media platforms? I've seen you do a TikTok dance dissing Leonard Taylor. What's going on, K Slay? Come on, JK Slay. Let it go. But yes, he has not played well.
Yeah, this is not the Leonard Taylor we expected. 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack. I know he's put together some pressures. I don't have all of the defensive numbers in front of me. Let me see if I
He
can
threw
call
a
it up
total
there.
goose eggs this past game, so that's not good.
Yeah, Ruben Bay needs a team with 19 pressures. Leonard Taylor has 6.
Yet
Again,
somehow he's rated in the top 14 in the ACC. Listen, some guys at PFF, I'm not going to accuse them of like smoking stuff or picking mushrooms near Gainesville, but dude, what?
yeah, they need production. They're not getting enough of it from him right now. This is from Cuban Kane with a K, Mr. Draper 5 on Twitter. How is this a rebuilding job when you have a veteran quarterback and other players? This program needs a clean sweep rebuild. Some people, Carlos, don't think Mario Cristobal is the guy. What is your response to Cuban Kane?
Okay, first of all, love the name. That's my identity. That's my spirit animal is Cuban King. The wholesale change that we saw from last year to this year, and the influx of talent, because I think they're a much better team in terms of talent on the roster this year than they were last year. I think that's evident by the way they're playing. The issue is you saw how bad that roster was last year and how much it takes to flip it over and how much you need behind it to continue to improve. It's not just the frontline players. You need depth, and that's the biggest issue with this team right now. You have some really good players that are starters. You need a little bit more depth. You need a little bit more seasoning as you go along, and it'll get there with recruiting classes. Like I said last week, Mario Cristobal is not going to win you any games when it comes to X's and O's, in-game coaching, any of that kind of stuff. He's Ed Orgeron, right? That is who Mario Cristobal is. But he will load the roster at some point. He will get this roster to the point where all he's going to be is a Joe Burrow away or a one player away from winning a national championship because he's got so much talent that's so overwhelming. They have no choice but to win.
Go Canes. That's how he says it. Columbus Kane here. Will we go after a transfer quarterback this offseason and also start to recruit higher rated, more ready high school quarterbacks? All right. Yes, there's not any big name high school quarterbacks committed to this program right now. I know we like 5 stars and 4 stars and all those kind of stars. Will they go after a transfer quarterback? Yeah, I think so. I think they always look at the market. It's what's available and who wants to come here. Shannon Dawson has been around a while. I know from talking to recruits, he's somebody that they know, somebody that they're familiar with. So I'm sure he probably has guys that he's recruited in the past that they will look into tapping and seeing if they can bring them in here. I don't think they're going to go into next season just saying, okay, Tyler Van Dyke's leaving. We're going to just stick with Jakari Brown and Emory Williams and bring in, Judd Anderson from the freshman from Georgia. I think it's going to be whatever it takes to win. And I would expect nothing less from Mario.
Yeah, and listen, before we keep going, your Ed Orgeron sounds like Randy Macho Man Savage. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
It's honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they go after somebody in the transfer portal, but only if it's a right fit. If you think it's a guy that could get you to the next level and push you along a little bit further in Emory Williams. And as far as not high-rated quarterbacks, Emory Williams and Jakari Brown are both Elite 11 quarterbacks, I believe. So that's nothing to sneeze at. They're very talented guys. They have a lot of ability. So you've got a couple quarterbacks on the roster that have developed properly, should be the next guy, right?
We'll see. I don't know. It all depends on how the season ends. Uh, Andrew V underscore 17. Did the new defensive coordinator for Georgia Tech find out how to expose TVD? Last two games alone, he has 5 picks in the run game. Not as good as we thought? Question mark. And are you concerned about our run defense moving forward? A lot to digest there, Carlos. We've covered
Yeah,
some of
that
these
that was
topics.
that was. Let's take this one by one because I am not. My memory is not that great. I've had a lot of
Did
head
did
trauma throughout my years.
did Georgia Tech's DC expose TVD?
No, Florida State's did 2 years ago. That that's the first one to start playing different coverages and forcing TBD to throw the middle of the field into traffic. That's the guy who started it. But yes, they did capitalize on what they saw from Georgia Tech a week ago. I think if you notice, every third down and long, North Carolina was dropping 8 into coverage. They only rushed 3 and forced TBD to find an open window amongst those 8 guys in the zone coverages. And he just couldn't do it. It didn't work out for him. And not that Dawson helped them in terms of the route concepts, because it seemed like Dawson was shocked every time they would drop 8, and he was running these routes right into the coverages. Like, what is going on here? How can we not find somebody open? How are we not getting separation? Because you're running the same plays and not anticipating what they're. I can't even do this, Manny. I can't even do this because I'm going to give myself an ulcer, and I'm too young for that shit. Okay. Next question on this 15 question dissertation this guy asked.
Is the run game not as good as they thought it would be? I will say this: they're 28th in rushing yards per game right now, and I thought they would run for over 2,000 yards. They're averaging 191 a game and on pace for 22, almost 2,300 yards.
I think the issue became this past game, and like you said, they got behind and they had to abandon the run game, which
Mm-hmm.
hurt them. I also think they're lacking diversity in the run game. You're seeing a lot of inside zone, a couple counters here and there, not a lot more than that. I think they need to diversify their running game, like I talked about with the Dolphins, how they use motion, formations, and shifts to get into basic run plays, but confuse the defense from how they get into those plays. I think that helps.
Are you concerned about the run defense,
Yes, I was at the start of the season, and I continue to be.
especially when teams play with pace? All right, this is from Von Kane. Why is TVD suddenly taking forever to throw? Seems like he's staring down his receivers or underneath zones, his kryptonite. How do we get the run game going again?
Okay, so yes, CVD's always stared down receivers. He just hasn't developed that ability to use eye discipline to move the defense. It's never been one of his strengths to move the defense with his eyes. The issue is he stares down receivers because he's not comfortable reading the zone. He's expecting something to be there, and when it doesn't materialize, he just goes to Xavier Restrepo. That's his problem. How do you get the run game going? I think you get the overall offense going by using more of those 2x2 receiver sets, 4 wide, 1 running back formations to help spread the field, create some more lanes inside, and use the horizontal pass game with the bubble screens, quick screens, RPOs to widen the defense and open these up and lighten that box to be able to squeeze some guys in there in the run game.
This one's from Trigger Trey, and I don't know the answer, Trigger Trey, but I'm going to read your question because I appreciate you sending it in. What happened to someone earning number 1 in the offseason? Not sure if you've mentioned it before, but I was just curious. It's a good question.
Earning the number 1.
Yeah, I remember Mario made a big deal about who gets to wear the number 1 and all that last year, but oh well. Ryan Samuels, 43. What do you think the team is due to get to that next level of competitiveness? For me, it's limiting turnovers and dumb penalties. How can this be done, though? I'll say this for the dumb penalties. They rank 112th in penalties per game. Turnovers, I mentioned they've had 12 already this year. That's an average of 2 per game. That's not good.
Yeah,
You got to play smarter. That's it.
exactly. You got to be more disciplined. And I think that's been the theme for this team for a long, long time is lack of discipline and focus. When you get guys wanting to do their own thing to try and be heroes, that becomes an issue. I think even Jaden Davis, like you were talking about, Jalen Davis, when the ball got thrown deep to Tez Walker and he was there stride for stride with him, rather than continuing to play through the ball on Tez Walker in the end zone, he decided to jump up and try and make a pick at it or try and bat it down from the air, and he just couldn't get there. Sometimes you just got to play through the receiver, do the fundamental things, the small things, the things that you're supposed to do your job, and that equals big gains because you're not giving up huge plays because you're not where you're supposed to be.
Right.
You do more damage by freestyling than by doing your assignment.
This is from Tony Perez, the big Chilean 63. Will the season spiral out of control, or is this team actually different? At what point does Mario begin to lose the locker room? I can tell you from being on the ground in Chapel Hill for the game, there were a lot of tears, a lot of anger. I didn't see guys necessarily quit. I didn't see a lot of indifference. They were emotional about losing this game, and I don't think any of that is fake. So to me, I think as long as they still care, you're going to see them fight. I don't know that they're going to necessarily lose this locker room. Maybe if they get killed by Clemson, maybe if like they have a ridiculous loss against Virginia or something like that, maybe then. But I don't get the sense. I do think this team is different.
Yeah, I think if they get mollywopped by Clemson again, then that's a problem.
David Hernandez, D Hernan _ is he says his take is Daryl Porter is the defensive MVP through 6 games, and then his question is, what's your take on the passing game? I think Smith and the tight end should be used more. Yeah, I think we've kind of hit all those topics pretty hard, David. We'll move on to the next one.
See you next week, David.
Stop Cop City, Taco Thunder 5 on Twitter.
Wow.
Well, the decision to not kneel the ball against Georgia Tech not only derail this season, but guarantee Mario never gains the control of this program again, that he needs to lead it. Are we now certain to be coach shopping within a couple seasons?
Wow. You talk about we pee on parades, my friends?
Yeah.
We get dark and gloomy. Now this man has gone way off. He's gone to the upside down from Stranger Things. He's gone all the way dark.
My answer to you, Stop Cop City, is no.
Stop, drop, open up shop.
Yeah. Mario's got a 10-year contract. I don't think Miami goes coach shopping until we hit the halfway point of that, and then things are really disastrous, like really bad. I just think he's got job security because he signed a 10-year, $80 million deal. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I think 8-4, 9-3, if he's consistently that, even if he's not, overwhelmingly successful being 10-2, 11-1, 12-0 elites, he's going to stay. I don't think they're going to fire him if he's winning 9 games a season.
Ben Pfeiffer, B52 on Twitter. Thoughts on lack of tight end usage in the passing game, stacked room with a lot of young talent around Cam. Yeah, we've talked about this quite a bit, Ben. They got to use it more, and maybe Elijah Arroyo's comeback this week will sort of get that started. Carlos, I'm going to move on to the next one just because we've been asked about that a few times. Let's see here. Rashard Smith question. All right, this is from Jay Salter, JRS Air 23. Aren't the Canes exactly who we thought they were in the preseason? Young, talented team with not much depth.
Hey, listen, you've read my mind. I started off with the whole Herm Edwards. We are who they thought they were. So thank you, sir. Great minds think alike. Yes, you are absolutely correct. They lack depth. They're young-ish, but they're just not there yet. I think if they finish 8-4, 9-3, it's a big success.
Natty or bust. Keep the standard. Understand you are running a business. I refuse to talk about how 8-4 is an improvement. This is according to our buddy Landfound on Twitter. Natty or bust. I love the fact he keeps the standard, Carlos. There's still fans who expect
keep the standard. Keep the standard. But where have you been for the last 20 years, my friend? I love you, man. I love you, Landfound. But over the last 20 years, if your standards have been natty or bust, you've been drinking beer and fishing during Hurricane Saturdays for a long time before the season's even halfway over, because we have not had many opportunities to even get near sniffing a national title or a 10-win season, aside from that 2017 year. So, I mean, dude, the reality is even your short-term memory is a concern. Do you remember how bad last year was? Do you remember how awful they were? 5-7? Do you remember?
Yep.
Okay. I mean,
this is from Gary's guys. Not sure why everyone is freaking out. I get it's Miami and the expectations are sky high, but we have shown clear progress since last year and have recruiting momentum. Regardless of the recent losses, it seems the program is in the best place it's been in a while. Thoughts? All right, Carlos, we'll end it with that one because we got a few other ones, but we're kind of going long here. To his point, do you think they're still on time? Do you think they're still on schedule at 9-9 in 2 seasons?
Currently, no. They should be 10-8.
Yeah,
that's where they should be. So they're currently behind schedule, but I think a win, like you said, against Clemson helps that. I think they finished the year 8-4, 9-3. That's a huge step forward for this program, specifically if they finish 9-3 and beat Clemson. That helps boost recruiting. That helps boost momentum. It helps boost the aura of the program. Then you get yourself into a better bowl game. You get a bowl win, and now you've got momentum heading to the offseason. That to me is where the sort of balance lies of the season.
I don't know what on schedule means anymore for the University of Miami, Carlos. It's been 20 years that they've been trying to get this right. And the one thing I can tell Miami fans is Mario Cristobal cares. He's trying to get it right. He's got a lot of people supporting him, trying to get it right. I don't think we live in a world where everything is linear. Just because Nick Saban got to Alabama and in his second year won doesn't mean that that should happen at Miami. Just because it happened with Urban Meyer at Ohio State that he won in his second year doesn't mean it should happen at Miami. Every situation is different. Everything coaches inherit is different. I'll say this for Mario, as you've eloquently put, and I've written in a column, he's not going to win you games with strategy. Just not his thing. He is going to mess up in that area. But I would much rather have a Mario Cristobal coaching my program than a lot of other coaches because A, he cares. It's not just a job for him. It's a life, right? This is his life. This is his passion. B, he wants to make it work. He knows how to make it work. He had success building really good rosters at other places, including FIU and Oregon and Alabama when he was an assistant there. So he has the experience. C, he learns from his mistakes, right? He fired his Josh Gaddis and a bunch of other assistant coaches. He made changes. I hate to tell Miami fans this, but this is as good as it's going to get, like in terms of what's available out there. Like to me, whenever people say, hey, it's time to get rid of the coach, time to hit the reset button, all that kind of stuff, it's like, why? Do you have a better replacement? Do you have somebody better, to bring in here that really wants this job, that's going to take it on the way that it needs to be taken on? Miami just started spending money on football. They just started investing in ways that it should have. And for years, they didn't do that. And now they've got somebody who, yes, he blew a game against Georgia Tech. And yes, he hired the wrong coordinators and all these, but this is a process and it's going to play out. And we will not know for another 3 or 4 years whether or not Mario Cristobal was the right hire. I just know this. If he wasn't the right hire, I don't know who ever would be. Again, I just don't know who that guy is. I don't know that that person exists because the expectations for this place and the deliverables, the things that they need, they don't have their own on-campus stadium. They're building a 300, whatever it is, $150 million practice facility, forever football home, all these things that other people have had, Carlos, they're just getting to. And that's a disadvantage. You're at a disadvantage at the University of Miami. I don't care how much talent you have in your backyard. None of these kids grew up with Miami winning. None of them. None of them were born when Miami won a national championship. All they hear is their parents say, yeah, go to the U because it was awesome once. It's not an easy program to inherit, not an easy thing to turn around. And
to your point about Mario being the guy, or probably the best guy for the job, his passion, his love for this university is unmatched, and he exudes that in everything he does. And I think even the recruits feel that from him. They feel that passion. They feel that sincerity about his love for the program, and that's why he's landing recruits in an environment right now where he's at a disadvantage in terms of recruiting resources, abilities to sell things, and even results on the field. So in the face of all those negatives, all those things that should be hindrances, he's still pulling players that he shouldn't be pulling and coming up with a big time recruiting class. And that speaks to his passion for the program and his passion for recruiting. And that above all, everything else, the ability to bring in talent, to acquire talent, to build a roster, that will lead you to success more often than just a guy who's great at X's and O's.
Agreed. And usually, guys will leave. This isn't a, where coaches are around for a long time. That doesn't really happen anymore in college football, right? Everybody's looking for the next job. So much is changing. The 12-team playoff is coming. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for him to have success. It's just getting there. And I told Big O this in my Saturday night appearance on his show right after the game. Miami fans have been sleeping on the same mattress for 20 years, and nobody likes sleeping on a shitty mattress. And Mario inherited this mattress that's 18, 19 years old, and it's hard to just flip it over and change it all quickly. Like, you can't just go out and buy yourself a winner. Even though NIL is a big helper in today's game, you can't just go out and buy the best players. That's not the way it works. They want to be improved. They want to have growth. They want to have an opportunity to go to the NFL. When you're building a program, it takes a lot of work and a lot of steps. And I think
using 4 or 5 of those Bed Bath and Beyond discount coupons and picking up some new sheets and pillows, it's not enough, man. It takes a while. You got to build that thing up. And I think he's started the foundation. I think the other thing is, I think Hurricanes fans, the expectation is that, oh, when we get it right, it's going to be the dynasty again. It's going to be that dynastic 80s, early 90s Hurricanes. And people need to adjust their expectations. And like we were talking about, success is not necessarily linear. They could finish 9-3 this year and dip back down to 8-4, 7-5 because of the change in the roster, and then be more youthful, but having more talent overall. They may be having a more difficult schedule. It all depends. And I think the thing is, you shouldn't be aiming for being Georgia, right? You shouldn't be aiming to be the Nick Saban Alabama dynasty. You shouldn't be aiming to even be your own dynasty from the 80s and 90s. I think if you become Michigan and you're competing year in and year out, getting into the playoff and having an opportunity to play for a national championship, that to me is what I think that's what the future holds for the most part. And you'll squeeze off a championship here and there every 5 to 6 years. That to me is a success.
Yep. All right, Carlos. Hopefully we start to see some progress, maybe a win against Clemson this week. We'll get Miami fans a little bit of a boost there because we're too negative for them for sure.
Yeah, no. That, you know what I need then? I need whatever shot combo Canes United is dropping down the ice sculpture to hit me right here in the mouth then, so I can be more positive.
All right, brother. Thank you for coming on. Make sure you follow Carlos on Twitter at
Ledo 1307, ELLEDO 1307. But only if you're going to be cool. If you're going to be a dick, forget I even mentioned that. Also, at MIA All Day Pod, that's the one I rarely tweet from. So if you want to be an asshole, go tweet me on that one.
You heard the man. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic if you can. Follow this podcast on YouTube.
Be an athletic supporter. Be an athletic supporter.
There you go. Wherever you can help out. All right. For Carlos Ledo, I'm Manny Navarro. We will see you guys later.
Peace.